0542 hours, November 8, 2025, 210 nautical miles east of Hokkaido. Before sunrise, the stillness shattered. Inside Japan's Aegis destroyer, JS Maya, 2 radar technicians spotted an abnormal thermal flare, a vertical plume rising sharply from the North Korean coastline. Only moments later, missile warning sirens erupted across northern Japan. Multiple trajectories identified, heading 041, velocity climbing past Mach 12. An operator reported urgently at 0543 hours, the first KN-23 short-range ballistic missile punched through the early morning clouds, followed by 2 additional launches. Their projected path aligned dangerously close to U.S. installations at Nasawa and Yokota. Japanese tracking systems detected 4 distinct launch origins near Wonsan, Sinsang-ni, and Chongjin. While North Korean state outlets later labeled it a routine exercise, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command classified it as a deliberate provocation. Within minutes, the U.S. Air Force's 35th Fighter Wing at Misawa went into full scramble. Runway lights activated, crews raced to stations. F-16 CMS loaded with AIM-120D interceptors climbed into the freezing morning air. Meanwhile, the USS Benfold DDG-65, positioned roughly 240 nautical miles east, began monitoring the launches through its Aegis Baseline 9 combat system. The fire control officer locked onto 2 inbound objects, one descending toward Japanese defense zones. At 0548 hours, the destroyer fired a ESM-3 Block 1IA interceptor, streaking skyward at Mach 14. Within a minute and a half, it struck the incoming missile outside Earth's atmosphere. A flawless engagement. The next 2 missiles splashed harmlessly into the sea, roughly 35 miles short of Japan's exclusive economic zone, believed to be intentional near misses, according to intelligence contacts. Inside the Pentagon's Crisis Coordination Cell, alarms triggered across U.S. forces Japan. Analysts reviewed satellite feeds pointing to mobile TL, transporter erector launcher vehicles being repositioned north of Pyongyang. By 0603 hours, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command escalated select bases in Japan and Guam to DEFCON 3 readiness. Unconfirmed intercepts from North Korean communications suggested testing of a modified hypersonic glide vehicle capable of abrupt mid-course maneuvers, potentially designed to evade missile defenses. At 0607 hours, Japan's Prime Minister spoke with the U.S. Secretary of Defense on an emergency line. A joint statement denounced the launches as a dangerous and escalatory act. Simultaneously, an AWACS aircraft established a surveillance orbit near Okinawa to detect any follow-up threats. But intelligence analysts noticed something unusual. Signals intercept teams detected encrypted communication between North Korean radar units and an unidentified node near the Chinese frontier. The contents, still classified, hinted at outside coordination or observation. It wasn't simply a launch, one senior U.S. intelligence official explained. It was a demonstration aimed at several audiences. As daylight spread across the Sea of Japan, a 4th missile, previously assumed to have malfunctioned, appeared again on satellite sensors. Instead of falling toward land, it descended in a curve toward open waters near the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group operating close to Okinawa. U.S. naval escorts immediately tightened into a defensive configuration. The USS Barry activated countermeasures, while EA-18G Growlers lifted off to begin electronic jamming cycles. For the first time since 2017, the carrier group prepared for a real potential intercept. At 0612 hours, U.S. Navy officials confirmed the projectile had disintegrated mid-air, whether by program self-destruct or through an unacknowledged directed energy system aboard the Raiden remains unverified, though defense insiders suggested the latter privately. The incident triggered widespread mobilization. South Korea scrambled KF-21 Baramai fighters. Japan placed its PAC-3 Patriot units around Tokyo into active configuration, and the United States launched Operation Iron Shield, a rapid joint readiness deployment involving 4,800 personnel across Japan, South Korea, and Guam, initiated within 4 hours of the initial launches. Then came the development that shook Pacific analysts. At 6:47 hours, reconnaissance satellites detected unusual thermal activity inside North Korea's Yongbyon nuclear complex. Analysts believed the regime had restarted an enrichment facility, an unmistakable political signal. North Korea wasn't just flexing missiles, experts observed. They were signaling capability, intent, and timing. Behind the scenes, the U.S. began shaping a response. A B-1B bomber flight from Andersen Air Force Base received authorization to conduct a low-visibility patrol near the Korean Peninsula. Sources claim the aircraft flew with a reduced radar cross-section, escorted by F-35s from the Sawa. By 07:15 hours, the standoff had escalated beyond a simple test. The Pacific was awake, and the United States was preparing to answer. What happened in the next 2 hours would become one of the most intense military standoffs of 2025. 7:16 hours, November 8, 2025, Pacific Command Operations Center, Honolulu, Hawaii. The assessment was clear. North Korea had crossed a strategic threshold. 7 minutes after the final missile event, the Joint Chiefs approved a Level-3 Contingency Response, a measure reserved for credible threats to Allied bases. At 07:23 hours, the Pentagon activated Operation Silent Sentinel. It began discreetly. 2 RQ-180 stealth reconnaissance drones were already airborne from Guam before the order was formally issued. Their task: evaluate missile debris, map trajectories, and determine whether any projectile carried active warheads. At the same time, Global Hawk drones transmitted detailed thermal imagery of suspected launch points around Wonsan and Sinzangni. Analysts identified 4 tells moving northward, possibly preparing for additional firing sequences. At 07:36 hours, the USS Ronald Reagan Strike Group received instructions to reposition toward the Philippine Sea. On deck, Admiral Marcus Doyle briefed senior officers. "This isn't retaliation, it's recalibration. If they attempt another launch, we'll see it before they ignite the booster." By 07:49 hours, satellites confirmed that B-1B Lancers had departed Guam, accompanied by F-35A stealth fighters. Publicly, it was announced as a training sortie. In reality, it was a strategic deterrence display aimed directly at Pyongyang. The B-1Bs carried AGM-158 JASSM-ER precision strike missiles, range 900 kilometers. Payload details remain classified. Their route skirted the edge of the Korean Aegis before turning south across the East China Sea, avoiding enemy airspace while staying close enough to send a message. At 08:04 hours, Japan's National Alert Network broadcast: "Citizens should remain indoors. U.S. and Japanese forces are performing active defense operations." Behind closed doors, the Cyber Command Center in Yokosuka detected signs of North Korean electronic interference, likely meant to obscure Japanese radar. The findings were forwarded to the Pentagon for immediate assessment. At 08:27 hours, Task Force Iron Shield was fully activated. Patriot PC-3 batteries around Yokota and Kadena went to live intercept mode. Aegis destroyers USS John Finn and USS Barry moved into synchronized radar formations to create an overlapping defensive shield over southern Japan. But activity inside North Korea's port of Nampo raised alarms. Satellite thermal scans revealed renewed movement around a missile-equipped naval barge long believed inactive. U.S. analysts feared this signaled preparations for a submarine-launched ballistic test, a severe escalation. At 08:43 hours, joint U.S. rogue cyber teams initiated digital disruption operations aimed at North Korean radar nodes and telemetry servers, an attempt to interfere with targeting systems before a second salvo could occur. Meanwhile, Japan's defense minister publicly stated this was no test, it was a rehearsal for conflict. Inside the Pentagon, that statement carried weight. By 09:05 hours, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command initiated Stage 2 deterrence presence, granting American bombers and naval units authorization to operate within strike distance of North Korea without entering formal mobilization. At 9:21 hours, 6 FA-18 Super Hornets from the USS Ronald Reagan took off alongside an E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft. Their patrol traced the outer edge of North Korea's missile flight corridor, a deliberate show of exposure. Electronic intercepts confirmed North Korean radar systems briefly locked onto the U.S. formation. No missiles were fired, but analysts later assessed the locks as simulated guidance tests. At 9:47 hours, tensions rose again. Two North Korean MiG-29s scrambled from Oncheon Airfield, flying dangerously near the maritime boundary. They never crossed, but their proximity triggered a combat air patrol response from U.S. F-35s. The encounter lasted 6 intense minutes. They were close, too close. One U.S. pilot recorded in flight logs. One aggressive turn, and everything could have escalated. At 10:12 hours, the MiG-29s disengaged. U.S. fighters maintained radar lock until the aircraft vanished behind their coastline. The atmosphere calmed briefly, but Indo-Pacific Command continued full vigilance. At 10:40 hours, a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon detected an unusual underwater acoustic profile in the East Sea, possibly a Simpo-class submarine. If confirmed, North Korea had deployed a missile-capable sub near Japanese waters. At 11:23 hours, satellite imagery revealed 4 B-52 bombers taking off from Guam on a long-range signaling mission toward Alaska, a dual message to Pyongyang and Beijing. Meanwhile, coordinated U.S. F-35s and Japanese F-15Js rehearsed live intercept patterns off Hokkaido, reportedly matching simulated trajectories from the earlier missile launches. By 12:08 hours, U.S. cyber divisions confirmed disruptions to at least 2 North Korean command relays, crippling parts of their missile telemetry systems for up to 48 hours. Publicly, Washington remained composed. Privately, the U.S. had issued a technological warning: "We can blind your launch systems before you fire." At 12:42 hours, Tokyo and Seoul issued synchronized demands that Pyongyang halt all hostile military activity immediately. Pyongyang offered no response, but at 13:15 hours, satellite imagery changed everything. A U.S. Space Force satellite detected a concealed launch preparation vehicle inside a hidden North Korean hangar. Coordinates were relayed instantly to Pacific Command. 4 minutes later, a classified long-range strike drone launched from the USS Benfold moved toward the target area. Its existence has never been publicly confirmed. According to unverified reports, the drone's infrared feed captured the platform retracting an aborted launch, possibly triggered by internal issues, or its detection by U.S. forces. At 13:30 hours, Washington labeled the situation stable but monitored. Behind the scenes, the U.S. mission had succeeded. 4 North Korean launch systems digitally disabled, 1 ballistic-capable submarine detected, multiple radar locks intercepted, 0 casualties. For now, analysts believe North Korea's display was a calculated warning, a test of U.S. and allied readiness. Instead, it revealed North Korea's weaknesses, vulnerabilities to American cyber capabilities, and precision strike surveillance. Inside Pacific Command, the conclusion was direct. Next time, they might not aim to miss.